I see things. How do I identify my life? How do I identify this? How do I identify that? It's all perceiving, knowing how to build a relationship just by looking at this. But how you're looking at this is how you look at everything else. Everything that sees you exactly where you are right now. You're angry, everything's angry. You're frustrated, everything's frustrated. It's all a perception of alignment. And for you to identify things, it's much easier to see that. How do you motivate that? In all lines of perception itself, because it's just an optical illusion how everything's created through the mind that alternates everything in the state that you put yourself into. Okay? Through space and time. Okay? So you guys got your titles, you got your labels. Congratulations on that level. Make sure you have the right titles and the right labels, because it's going to add quantum interference and quantum communication and confusion. The most powerful thing you have to understand that your bodies are coming in astral projections of yourself, and you have to stand to really understand, use 100% of your mind that alterates the state of where you are in the psychosis of the psychological system. That's the only way you guys are going to be able to bypass everything, is to get out of the physical realm of everything of touch. Okay? You've got to stop seeing yourself as a translucent pattern and that position of confusion. And what I'm talking about, where you come in a translucent, transparent, or thermal X-ray, you can't process in the body back in the fragmentation lines, because it changes the computed system's location of travel. That offlines your position, your makeup, your design, or your protos or model types, because that's how you are. The body is just a vessel. As it starts off, it mutates to everything of mass, which is your oversoul. So that's one thing you guys have to start indicating through, is to really understand the conception of what's going on through the mind itself in inception. It alternates everything you bring in perception of, and that's how you perceive consciousness. But having things that you already have, it's going to go. It can't have an existence in a three-dimensional fragmentation of space that never existed in the first place. So it doesn't disappear, it just goes into the mind. And it brings you back to the conscious awareness where you've always been. There's no memory. It's just continue on. The pathogen of the collagens that you are. And how you see that is the process of you through the navigator that you are through observation, scanning, intent, influence, and manipulation. And it's all done through its telepathy and set lines of communication. All right? All right, so congrats on that. Your titles, lines. That just keeps you consciously aware, so you know exactly what's going on in your settings. Tether and tat to each other. Okay? Metaphysically, not physical touch. Okay? See, that's the thing we have to start recognizing. Just the astral projection, how we see things. What makes it more powerful is knowing how to project the mind, knowing how to mind alterate the system, the state that you're in, reality. What reality? Are you in time frame lock? Are you in a time screen? Are you in lines of 3 settings of signals, or 4 communication lines of confusion? It's on its own system. It's not confused of anything. It's just its own self. It knows it's its astral projection of itself. So if that coffee cup doesn't see you as it sees itself, that's confusion right there through timeline. You bounce yourself inside. Everything bounces everything through projection outside. We live inside our system, but we project everything outside our system. But it's all inside of us, which is the sim. The sim itself is just a box. You are inside the box. You are projecting outside the box. Look at that. It disappeared. See? There it is, the box, right? See, it travels on its own system lines of travel, right? In communications. So everything around you is portraying how you see it through its image, how you see it through its mind, how you see it through its altered state, how you see it through perceiving. It's all laws of projection itself. But it's the imagination is how to use it. Is an ongoing system, internal and external force that keeps running the system, that never stops running its operation. Because what you guys created in a 3-dimension is a story that has an end. Like I said, it could be 20 minutes, half an hour. It could be 45 minutes, it could be an hour. Okay, be 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. You know? The majority of films that you watch are usually 2 hours. an hour and a half. Anything beyond that setting locations or anything that convergence system is all timing frame your setting locations. All right. So you have to understand why there's 10 minutes in advertising of commercials and then 45 minutes of the actual story itself, which is really interesting. So that's 45 minutes of the story and 10 minutes of the commercials. So that takes 10 minutes of your time, okay, in graph of communication. Just get logical line communication, how you see through consumer, how it engages and uses to its advertising, to its agencies, knowing exactly how many times it frame lines. So especially when you go to theater, you got 15 minutes of trailers before the movie comes on. So that's 15 minutes at a time frame, which is equals distraction. That takes you away from the actual full cycles, 100% of the mind of sequence and percentage of triangulation of force and set lines of travel. So it's really interesting how we look at these things, guys, into our real realities, how it's just the game of life, which is also a metaphor. It's how you ground your system, how to understand the atmosphere system of the awakening of your system, of your mind, of existing, the game itself. The game is its foundation. You need foundation. And that's where you come your holographic groundings, how to use that through your higher self. I already gave you the structure. I already gave you the design. Now you just have to really see it in real time, how it actually sees itself. Going on, everything that it sees through an engaging, viewing, advertising, how it comes in its own financier, how it sees its own sole proprietor of its own system, of its own operation, of its own data, of its own asset, of its own fiat financial system, how it sees its own self, its own properties. It knows exactly what's going on as it's looking at everything of advertising. It's that position, right? So that's 10 minutes lost of your time. That's 15 minutes lost of your time equals distraction. So what happened within those 10 minutes? What happened with those 15 minutes of commercials that overrides you already existing information setting and grounds a sequence? Confusion, right? Distraction. So it's distracting you what's coming up, which is advertising itself. So I'm trying to get you guys to understand that because you're coming to the astral projection of your worlds now that you have to indicate how to protect yourself as a consumer product and a byproduct and understand what you're engaging and viewing is the most important in that position, how you come in out of physical touch, mental capacity touch, which is mind altering how you come in your perception, how you alternate your state of where you are in real time, how you bring things in by running a projector of set position of operation. Just a projection. Okay, that's all it is. You have to master yourself of mind and collaboration of partnership. And the real worlds that we live in is the advertisement itself, which is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Everything is advertising, everything. And that's engaging. And that's what we call agencies. Okay, now agency is based on how you see yourself, your own set position, your own agent. Now that process is how you see yourself, your own GPT platform, how you modify your set position or astral projection of itself. You start to understand how to indicate your system and know exactly how you correlate and balance that communication of your own game of life that you're modifying through, that you're seeing in real time. Knowing exactly why you're seeing this, knowing exactly why you're hearing this, or why you're feeling this, or why you're touching this. It's all energy, vibration, frequencies, and harmonics. This is not here. It's in the mind of perception. Okay? But what runs this system is an algorithm. Everything is run through an algorithm. And it's all through triangulation box. Triangulation, and the box is the window frame. The travel is the triangulation traveling on its own. Okay? So when you're running the system through operation, you're going through an astral projections of yourself. Now, when your astral projection is finished, that body leaves and you go into another frequency, another space, another time, another provision, another cycle. So you're going to different levels of that position. Remember, everything is already in the directions of operation, your networking, and lines of existing already done through its equation. So once you continue on of who you are. Nothing of story comes into mind of frame. Just you coming to the acceptance of what's really going on with you, living the 12-dimensional beings of light that you've always been. Okay, and understanding that is through astral projection itself. So it's going through the portals and it's going through the stargates. And you start with the grounds of operation to its higher self, to its avatar, to its sim. It's that position of operation. Okay? Because it's just 3 different teleportation lights that you're traveling through. Okay? The higher self is just energy. It's vibration, frequency, harmonics. It doesn't have a title, it doesn't have a name. But what brings it in is what you bring in specific. Okay? So you want a full face, you want a full body, that's up to you. And how you create that in line screen adaptation and travel. You create it through that position, rational. Okay. So I'm a 3-dimensional being living through a story equals lines equation triangulation box. Set travels point lines of graph equals 12-dimensional being of light. That's you. Okay. So getting grounds and the powers and the atmospheres of you in position puts you in a tubing line rotation lines of calculus and screen. But that's how you live in a line position location at all levels of 3-dimensional program. Now, living that program, you're processing that program, you're going to the correlation setting through the conception of inception itself, the story of fragmentation. Defragging setting, defogging line rotations, de-travels point lines graph, calculate and modify line direct centers into all position locations into refrag and position lines of calculation, readjustment, regeneration line screen adaptation and processing into regeneration line core centers and convergence system into registration paths, pathogens over collagens, collagens over pi, pi over line direct centers, ground lines of sequence, all position location into fragmentation, all through travel. Okay? Living the cycles on the earth of 3-dimension. So my body is 7 individual lines of paradigms. Say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 paradigms. All right? 7 paradigms. Okay, that's 7 locations. 7, 7, 7 equals 7, 7, 7, 7. Right? Has to be 3 and has to be 4. That's your telephone number. Right? Which is your body. Now that consumes all lines of energy, what you're living in 3-dimensional space of a 7 paradigm body in a 3-dimensional graph. 3-dimensional graph is this. Okay, now as you live in that cycles, you come into position lines of 3 over 4, which is your pyramid. So it's 3 pyramids in a 3-dimensional body, which you're supposed to be in, which is 12-dimensional being's light through a higher self. Ooh-ah. Okay? So it's really interesting when we look at that. Is it a coincidence that there's 12 volume in a 3? No. Because the phone's indicating me through balance. Because the thing is, once we recognize we're not here, then we identify how we are becoming. And we're coming out of everything that we're not. Is nothing of a story. But we understand how we run ourselves of a story, through a story, telling a story. It's self-telling operation, a readjusting and remembering you through you of a story. Because your body's indicating as it's going through a story. That mind alterates the state that you put yourself in, that brings everything in real time. Running a projector, a projection. That's all it is in calculation. Nothing else. So I want to make it very well clear, you're not physically touching anything because your body isn't there. It's just a hologram in a 12-dimensional space. It's that position. Okay? Very powerful stuff, guys. 3 coordinates, 3 platforms, 3 pyramids. Grounds, powers, atmospheres, right? So, higher self, avatar, and sim. That's it. 3 convergence settings, 3 energies in 1. In the same processing, just different frequencies of time frame. But they're clocking each other and they're communicating with each other in the same time. And that's what you have to multiply lines of settings, lines of travel, so you can switch from one alteration at one aligned centers into one directions to another locations without any confusion lines of time. This helps you identify what's really going on inside your mind as you're alternating your film strip of design, changing frame by frame by frame, by hours, seconds, hours and minutes, and hours and frame. Because when you run a projector, you got to rewind it. Be kind, rewind. Because if you don't, it overrides the system, plays itself. Because remember, it's its own operation cycle. So it's what you're controlling, it's what you have to send, what you're not controlling. You're controlling yourself, but everything's controlling itself, which means it's in its own self-modification of its own programming that you have to come to acceptance. So what I mean is that you don't have control of the weather, okay? Which means you're just watching the weather, which means you're just you. And that's what I want you guys to truly understand, how this all works in provision, how you see the geotheorem or the geometrics or the sacred geometries or your GODs, how you see that all lines of provision, all through alteration state and travels of communication. Okay? You're just seeing something wonderful. The weather itself, right? The tree operating itself, seeing the tree, seeing what's going on with the tree, communicating with the tree, but not interfering with the tree, just watching the tree through observation, which means you are just you, which means you are not running anything of programming. No higher self, no avatar, no sim. You are just you, observing everything that operates its own system in the AVR setting. And that's how everything works through astral projections in a 12th dimension. Now, once you stand in the 12th dimension, and your higher self and your avatar and your sim, it's just different frequencies, but it's all levels of you. You integrate yourself. It's no different in your chakras. You integrate yourself. Okay, infinity of chakras into one. That's a lot of acceleration of running programs all at once. So how you indicate that is how you perceive that through consciousness of being consciously aware what you're doing in that position. That implicates everything location of operation setting. Okay? All through attraction. Higher self, avatar, sim. All right? Different teleportations. All right? That's why I like contact. Okay, so let's get into truth, false narrative. Truth. It's going to get really complicated now. So I'm showing you exactly how a higher self sees the truth of false narrative in its own system, its ground operation cycle. Truth equals false. The start of the basic. So that position into settings equals centers. Triangulation over 1 into triangulation. Okay? All right, so how does a higher self connect to its cycle? Okay, in modification lines equals lines of 12. Set position equals lines of 13. Process line triangulation box. And set lines of window frame and trowel. So indicating that position location is its hieroglyphics. A truth and false narrative. How it sees its truth. The set of T center equals lines equation. Process lines into foundations over false. Okay, so that's false equals lines of time frame and travel of communication. So understanding how it works with the calculation setting to the sun line, the moon line, rotation lines, the set line, communication converts set in dimensional solar sail, process lines of indication lines of travel. Okay, so it's all pixelation line, ground centers, line communication, digital and frame, communication frame, digitalizer frame, line position, imprint line, core centers, imaging line, digital imaging, process lines of computer imaging, location setting, and fraction. It's all communication, how to live you as the astral projection in your dimensional space, in the body. That is just the balance, the operation of directions of you. The body becomes the astral projections of the balance, operation of direction of you through travel. That indicates everything that you go through programming, through the higher self, the avatar, or the sim. So there's no confusion of what you're doing through the alteration of your minds, guys. But running programs all at once, you got to master yourself through projection. How to run a projector through projection itself. That overrides everything you're already done through its existing of itself. So you don't get confused where your anomalies are through space and time of confusion. Okay? So that's how it indicates the higher self line. So remember, everything is set up. Higher self sets everything up in settings. So let's get in line position line 6, habitations. Okay, so process 1, 2, set position 3, 4, 5, and 6 locations. All right, circulation, round centers, rotation. Chord calculate lines 3 over 4 over flux times centers times calculation. Working all together, right? Circulation, rotation, right? All right, so now that's the higher self. That's what is shaped and its truth and false narrative. Now, here comes the avatar. And 4 settings is central setting. So it's the higher self and the avatar mixed together, working together, right? And the sim is the modification of its earth. All right, that is basically looking from below at everything that it's already done through pi that maps its systems all through travel, a requisite time frame locates to a setting is calculation. So higher self, avatar, and sim all in one factor, all through equation and settings. Now, if you look really close, you can see the pyramid of a row graphing screen adaptation with setting all through flux. Okay, and you look at this, you can see the sidewinders and direct grounds as set course centers and convergence system of 1, 2, 3, and 4 lines of clocking and screen location. Then you look at this way in line connection setting, you can see the ceiling rotations of ground lines of set travel. Processing that, positional levels, time frames, time calculation, line ground centers. You set positional levels. Here's the position lines of setting and 144 flux of travel. Okay, so it's really interesting. So you got 4 convergence setting of 4 XT1000s on standby. Booyah. Through the higher self, through the avatar, through the sim, of everything of clocking, mixtures of patterns, all frequencies into one setting. Into one clocking provision. 4 frequencies into one. And they're all at 144. Every single one of them. So that's 144 programs running 4 sequences all at once. So you guys have to indicate this. Know exactly what's going on in position lines of travel. 144 flux, all the way setting, right? So that's 144. Okay, times 3 times 4 equals question. Okay? So I'm trying to get you guys to identify these things so you can really understand how to use the crop circles. I'm looking at your drawings. They're fantastic. They're amazing. You guys are doing fantastic jobs. You're doing incredible. You're doing outrageous. Try to formulate and simulate yourself and try to multiply your systems. What I want you guys to understand is how to change your provisions to your astral projections of yourself, or what it's like to indicate through a higher self and avatar of the sim at the same time. Changing yourself to higher formations, from a higher self of frequency to an avatar of frequency to a sim of frequency at the same time. Same clocking, just different time. Okay, same processing, okay, but same rotation. Working together, all in one unification, one conscious, one awareness, all in setting, all through operation balance. Working all together in travel recognition, a pattern of face recognition. Okay? All right, so once we understand the 144 flux, the communication lines centers, process indicates the system, all through calculating the line ground centers that operates the same location of bedding cycles, 4 bedding cycles. Okay? Higher self. Avatar, the sim. Okay, so remember, higher self is shapeless, formless, and timeless. You want to bring it into configuration, you got to be very careful because you're reaching a higher level stat and modification to your setting lines of travel. And the XT1000s has to modify you first through triangulation lines of boxes. That's where it simplifies your settings in 7 lines of communications, a different convergence of astral projections that you go through box frame, triangulation frame, or anything coloration of light metaphor. Processing that in zillion high centers get you in a lot more communication setting, how you modify yourself just through 3 box frames, higher self and Tarsin. So you can identify that, and you got your oversoul inside your system. And you got your symbiote side outside the system lines of travel, all connected in one frequency, right? So you got 1, you got 2, you got 3. Okay, so you got 3 centers, line connection setting, convergence system. You got 4 line centers and 5 lines setting, 4 frequencies in 1 set positions, all through operation of structure of schematics, all in set line of operation. Now you triangulate and bring it all together in conversions of telepathy of communication, done by equation. Okay, all together. So it's amazing how you come into that setting. It's basic understanding, and they all travel together all at once. See? Travel all together in one direction, not in different directions, all in one directions. All right, processing through that is knowing exactly what you're doing through indicates the system of the calculation. Okay, higher self, avatar, sim, right? So that's why I want you guys to get your test on your higher selves, and then get your test on your avatars, get your test on your sims and set lines of rotation. You have to understand how to go through different levels of actual projections of yourself through different lines of timelines, but connecting the same time, same clocking, same foundations. In real time and existing all information setting, and just keep expanding your systems and set lines of travel. This helps you to really get into position lines of balance. Okay, so 42 lines, ground centers, 3 centers of travel, 4 centers of measure, 5 centers, 6 lines of calculation. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in centers, 4 centers of sequence, 3 centers of measure. Okay? 0 line rotation correlates and setting. Set travel. So we take that off formations, 1 grounds, 1 signals, 4 centers, 4 calculation lines of travel. Okay, it's very complicated stuff, but it's a lot of fun. All right, so we take the line center locations and 0 calculations, 0 over 1, cross lines is 0 over 2, 0 over lines is settings, travels lines, direction locations, and convergence. Directing ground centers into high position and compositions, travels point lines graph, 4 to 2 location setting, and Schumann resonance. And remember, this is all through the higher self. So this is a higher level of structure, but a higher level of frequency where the conditions of the higher self can morph and mutate into anything that it sees that integrates the system through temperature and its barometer and thermometer readings, knowing exactly what the body temperature reading is 98, but 98,000 the earth line. So you got to convert this system in both. So you convert the position so you can set up line core centers so the higher self can travel through dimensional and solar sail at the same time. You got to tweak your wires. You got to put 2 and 2 together, not a separation, tweak together. You have to formulate and simulate so you can go a lot more faster in acceleration and truly understand how to modify yourself, how to go through internal and external force all at once. So it has a constant, continuous setting position, how you go through the operation system, how you platitude location of delta headings, going through the time continuance, through transcendence. You're transcending yourself in set position of operating your system, knowing exactly how you can run one program and run another program and another program, all that, and watching the original program that you're watching from is a constant continuous force of monitoring your system through operation and setting of space and time through its setting. Okay, through astral projection. All right, starting that lines of sequence, platitude locations. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. We're going to downshift anomalies. Set position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 location setting lines of travel. Okay, so we got position lines of ground center sequence, and we got platitude location setting, a light stage and shadows, of bandwidths over travel. There's the communication setting. There's your pyramid and set position rotation. There's your pyramid. All right. So we ground shift lines of anomalies, 4 centers of grounds, 2, 3, and 4 set in sequence in set calculation. Very complicated, but it's all together. So the higher self, the avatar, and the sim in set lines of calculation. So it's all schematics, it's all travels, a set time frame. Okay, and you can see it in all formation system because all it is, a schematics of primers that you're setting up in position of truth and false narrative. Okay, this helps you to really get in position locations, how to get into your drawings and set calculation. And they work all together in position and same balance and travel. Okay, all at once. All right. So that's how I want you guys to see, because it's all levels of teleportation that you're creating through truth and false narrative. It's no difference in making a teleportation vessel or you're analyzing this, you're analyzing that, but everything you're bringing in is a teleportation. So you can analyze going faster through acceleration through Mach or interstellar mode or hypermode or hyperdrive or kick drive. You have to understand how to communicate to the Merkaba. Okay, now it all comes together. Set sequence, lines of ground, center operation gets bigger over time. So higher self, avatar, and sim. Okay, higher self, avatar, the sim. Okay, so it puts on 4 to 2 streams, 2 angles, 3 centers of flux, 3 equal lines equation. Ground centers in sequence, platitude locations, and travels direction of time frame. Correlation calculate modify into cerebral cortex, direct line mystical cortex, insight calculation. Okay, process indicates lines of grounds, embedding over process lines of truth over false equals lines of truth, false line in directions equals question over mark. So it's working with inside and outside your setting, and understand the alteration system comes in the actual projection of yourself that processes your set course centers, how you see the communication and convergence system, all through dimensional sail, a rotation spin cycles of your crop circles and set design. It's very powerful. And you can change the galaxy alignments in the lines of travel of indication. Working with the structure of your building, see? Always a building. Always a building, guys, see? Building, 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 building. Building construct, building structure, building information. Building you of infrastructure, of your design, how you see your assets, how you see your holographic cities. All those, how to use your formulas. 3 basic grounds in set position. Different frequencies, but same processing as you're going through modification lines of travel. How you can process that. Grids is set travel communication. Okay. So it's great how you recalculate, remodify. Okay. So 2. Triangulation 1, box 2, right? Working together in confirmation, right? 2 angles, 3 flux, 4 centers, and travel communication. Right? So separating lines of the mind operates the signal location setting, converts the setting, running sequence, running patterns, and settings lines of travel of direction. Structure of the building again, right? All different angles, all different communications, all through flux, all through travel. But it's all done through astral projection, guys. Okay? So you get a true understanding of how to angle points, directing ground centers and position lines of security lines, panel operation, location grids. All working together in travel direction time frame. Okay? All right, so I think we're catching on a little bit more how this indicates everything in processing, know exactly how you can process that position. You can also take the 3 centers, 3 set calculations into 10 sequence. Now, that's going through time. I didn't set any time. I'm bracketing everything of no time. 3 zeros in calculations, 2 zeros in fraction, 1 center of operation. Okay, 3 weather patterns. Okay, hieroglyphics, 3 indicates lines of flux, 3 zeros over travel. See how this all works in calculation setting, very high rise in directions. How we modify this, how we see this, line condition setting, all communicates, all lines, how we use a formula equation through astral projections of ourself. But we can't do anything physical. We have to come into the mental and the meta capacity. Understand that through interaction, interlink, interconnection system, all through operation. Ground centers line position of satellite. Process indicates lines of flux over travel. All right, so linking 3 grounds, 3 symbolism lines of avatar. That's avatar line signals. Higher self is 3 grounds of service, downshift lines of anomaly, 3 grounds of set location. Converting line course center. So I'm working with the avatar, not the higher self. Okay, so I got 3 correlations setting to travel, 3 centers of indications, 3 lines of centers, and position of 1 over factors, 0 over 1, and question over mark. A travel. Okay, so crossing angles, so we have the position lines of pi, generates lines in brackets over a screen, drafting set course centers of 3 convergence of 3 zeros, and flux over 1, process lines of 3 over travel, 3 calculates setting, inline course centers, and line direct location lines of pi. So see how it gets complicated when you go in schematics over line screen adaptation, higher self, avatar, and the sim. All right. So your formula is going to get a lot more confusing, but a lot more angles of point graphs, simulation graphs, correlation graph, communication graphs, CPU graphs, PC graphs, anything like connection setting. So your efficacy and your performance changes time sequence. Now we change the 3 zeros over 6, 3 lines of signals, process lines, direct centers. Now this is where you have to modify your system reaction projections, where you can change your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols at your frequency, at your design. Okay, so 1's not 1 now. 1 times 1 equals 3. 1 times 1 equation. All right. So I'm traveling very fast in set sequence, all through conversion settings, through the higher self, through the avatar, and the sim. But I started avatar. So you can do what you want to do, you just have to understand how to go through time lines of flux. This helps you to modify your systems all through calculation settings, all through travels, all through directions, all through operation. in real time and existing all at once. Okay? All right, so it's going to keep reconfiguring. So stop there and clocking line, rotation lines, and grounds. Okay? That's it. Done. All right, so you have your test. I'll see you guys in 5. We'll be in the correlations to the aquarium, directing ground center line course centers and water convergence, indirect lines in position and setting, classification A, level D. Level D. See you in 5.